Welcome to the Facility Focus podcast presented by New Standard Cleaning. Today, I'm joined by Joel Craddock, President of Doc's Facilities Solutions, CEO of Doc's Facilities Consulting, and an ISSA Master Trainer. Every slip, every complaint, every failed audit in a building traces back to a decision someone made about how it gets cleaned. Doc has spent his career making sure that the decision is the right one. Today, we're getting into commercial cleaning, scope of work, workforce development, managing your cleaning contractor, and how the right systems can remove risk from your building. Enjoy the show. Hey, Joel, thanks for coming on.
Oh, you're welcome, Matt. Thank you for inviting me.
I've seen a lot of your content online, and I thought I got to reach out to this guy and ask him a bunch of questions. So I appreciate you coming by.
As you can tell from my content, I'm a fairly free sharer of, how we can improve all of our businesses.
Yeah, that's great. And I see your brand, Docs, on everything. So I've been trying to tell myself his name's Joel. His name's Joel.
I go by Doc.
Okay, you go by Doc. Okay.
I do go by Doc.
But that brand has really stuck with me. So you're doing well there.
And there's a story behind the Doc.
Yeah.
Would you like to hear it?
Yeah. Do you want to tell me about it?
Sure. Now, my father, God rest his soul, he died back in 2004. And as a kid growing up, he always told us that, show people respect. And one of the biggest signs of respect was always, calling people by their right name. So in our heritage, our last name is pronounced Craddock, hence the Doc. But most people, when they say it, will say Dak, Deck, Duck, Dick, everything else but Doc. And he goes, we're not Dicks, we're Docs. So when I decided to start my own company, I was going to name it something different. And my best friend, Ray, goes, dude, you've been calling yourself Doc forever, so that people, that's the name of your company is Docs. So he actually even designed my logo for me because he's a graphic artist and stuff like that. So that was his gift to me when we started the business. But that's the story behind the name Doc. So in the Rochester area, I know if people are friends or if they're business associates based on how they call me. So
yeah, cool. So tell me a little bit about how you got started in cleaning and facilities and, how you got to where you're at today.
way back. I had the opportunity to clean my church as a young child for 25 cents an hour. That's what the pay rate was back then for people that were under the age of 16 type deal. We were able to, I had my working papers. I was able to do that. So I cleaned the church and the rectory for 25 cents an hour once a week. So that was kind of my first exposure to the cleaning industry. I got my first big boy job in the summer of 1986 working for a company called Ben Franklin, which was a five and dime type store, retail store. And part of my responsibilities were cleaning the bathrooms, sweeping and mopping, the store itself, running the vacuum. So again, a little bit more. And then fast forward to 1991, I started working for then the area's largest janitorial contractor because my cousin was an operations manager there. And all the time he'd ask me, he says, oh, are you looking for a part-time job? You looking for a part-time job? You looking for a part-time job? And I'm like, no. And finally one day it was like, yes, I need something to supplement. I'm engaged. I bought my first house. We have all these, I need money. I said, are you sure you have a job? He goes, we always have a job. So I started out at a position called a troubleshooter. I was near graduation with my second college degree at that time. So I was kind of on a fast track because of my educational background. And I came from a family that was very hardworking. And my father used to tell us all the time, you put in an honest day's work for an honest day's dollar. You dress for success. You dress for the career you want, not the one that you're in. So I would show up dressed a bit nicer than some of the other people. And, I took direction, and I was a quick learner, a quick study. So I had like 3 promotions within the first 6 months. And then
Okay.
I got into my first management position within 6 months of working for that particular company. And then it just blossomed from there. And I've worked for several companies over the course of years. I ended up working for a company that was a franchise. I was hunted by a headhunter, and I ended up working for a franchise. And I appreciated the opportunity, but it wasn't a good fit for me because I didn't like the way that they kind of operated, and that wasn't something that I wanted anything to do with. The gentleman realized that I was uninspired as a salesperson for him, so I was told they were going to let me go and that he'd pay my unemployment till I could find something. I thought that I was a hot commodity, and boy, was I wrong. Um, Nothing is more humbling than being laid off and then trying to find a job because, as you probably know, running a company, there's not a lot of cleaning companies that have a dedicated salesperson within their organization. And I didn't want to start back at ground zero and work my way up. So when my unemployment ran out, I'm like, well, what do I know how to do? What can I make money at?
Yeah.
So I says, well, if I'm going to start at the bottom, I might as well start my own company. And hence, that's how Docs came about
Yeah.
with my then
Great.
partner.
That's a great story. I think it's typical of a lot of people in the industry. I mean, maybe not starting out at the wage that you did. I think a lot of people haven't experienced that. It sounds
Yeah.
illegal, to be honest. But
Well, when you're under the age of 16 and there's a sub wage, but it was very dedicated to certain types of jobs that
okay,
allowed it.
okay. So tell me a little bit about like the lessons that you learned early in your career and how they still apply today.
Hmm. One of the most memorable moments I had was when I worked for that very large cleaning contractor. And actually, there's 2 good defining moments with that. So, like I said, I was fast tracked up into management and things like that. There was a step that I took from what was then a full-time area manager into an operations position. It was a huge change in responsibility. Like I was managing about 25 to 30 people, and then I moved into a job responsible for 350 people. There was no intermediate step in between the two.
Okay.
And I was struggling, and I would go home to my then wife, and I would tell her all the time, I'm not cut out to do this. I can't do this. It's just not for me, and there's too much responsibility. I don't feel like. And she said, well, it sounds like you got to have a talk with your boss. So I went in and I talked to the director of facilities, and he said, you are the right person. He says, I would be worried if you weren't worried. Yes, we are very concerned with the problems that are cropping up because we didn't see these types of issues coming up when we promoted you to this position. But your dedication, your hardworking, you ask questions, you stay late, you push yourself. He says, you do all the things that are needed for this position. You have very high expectations. People follow you. Your staff, when you work one-on-one with them, will do anything for you. And he said, so the fact that you're worried tells me that I have the right person. It will all level out eventually. So that was like a big thing, because later in life, I had someone come to me telling me the same thing, that you need to let me go. And I'm like, the fact that you're in my office tells me that you are the right person. And I felt like I was spitting out the same information that he had spitted out to me all those years ago. And then one other time, I had a very good year at the job that I was in, and I was named Employee of the Month twice over like 3 or 4 month period of time. And I was almost maxing out my monthly bonus and things like that all the time. And I had one of the highest retention rates that the company had ever seen. I hit a staggering like 97.5% retainage of clients from one year to the next. And we had
Wow.
a structured tier. So again, not only did the director of operations have a chat with me, but then so did the vice president, saying, "You're a budget buster." Well, I kind of got a little cocky at the age of, 24, 25, somewhere around there, thinking, hey, yeah, look at me, And I went out, there was a retirement party for somebody. As we know, in janitorial work, when's the work done? Typically evenings, because that's when buildings are empty. That's when the work gets done. So I really was close to this person that was retiring. So I left my job early, being a salary employee, because I had worked all these other times, late and stayed and did whatever. And I was told there better not be any problems in any of your work the next day, because it was on a Friday night. And I said, there won't be any problems. Again, playing the cocky card. And there was a very big complaint from probably the smallest tenant in a building that we had, but they were the most vocal. And it was one suite that I always had to walk through every single night, even though it was a 2-person office. It was an admin and the person who owned the practice. And we had to check things because they would mark the paper towels to make sure we weren't using their paper towels. And they would, all these like little types of things. And of all the clients to call, it happened to be that client. So I got written up for it, for leaving my job early and everything else. I mean, I was there. Everybody saw me there and everything. So I did. I got written up and disciplined and brought in to talk to HR and my boss. And again, I was told it's not what we did last night, last week, last month, or last year. It's what have you done for me lately? So I have always looked at how I deal with my clients, and even to this day, anybody who directly reports to me or even indirectly reports to me as a frontline staff member in my own organization, I try to explain and get them to focus on those types of things. Is that it doesn't matter how good we were a week ago. What matters is how the client perceives us today.
Right. Yep. That's an important point. A lot of people, they feel that if they've been servicing a customer for a long time, it's theirs forever because they've done a great job. But it doesn't take for a lot of things to go wrong for the customer to become unhappy. And, it needs to be right every day. Otherwise you'll hear about it.
We are graded on what we did the previous clean.
Right. Right. So we'll switch over to talking about the industry a little bit.
Sure.
Can you tell me what types of services and offerings you think are sort of differentiating average cleaning companies and some of the better companies out there?
A lot of startup companies will start with just basic janitorial services because that's what you got to do to get your foot in the door. And then usually what I tell, because not only do I own a cleaning company, but I own a consulting company and work with, young startups or companies under $5 million, is kind of like, what do we do next? Because we know, just like a supermarket, that janitorial services is not that high marked up. It's a very tight margin when we're bidding with other companies and stuff. It's razor thin margins. So in order to be successful, you have to add other services. So maybe that's porter services. If you have a building that's big enough, that has enough traffic in the course of a day, that has thousands of people walking in, maybe you offer porter services so that they're punching up the restrooms and maintaining the entrances and the stairways and the elevators, the high traffic areas. Other services might be floor care work, which requires a lot of skill, a lot of different investment in types of equipment, and usually the skills of a typical frontline employee don't match the skill set that you need to do floor care, because some of it's physical and some of it is the attention to detail that has to be done. And also, how do you work with the machinery so that not to damage a facility? Carpet cleaning, again, is something that is looked at because most buildings have a lot of carpeting. And if you can find a way to do some of the like low moisture systems that require fewer people to do than if you have a truck mount system or if you have portable units that you're bringing in and things like that, and can get on maintenance programs where you're doing regular carpet cleaning more often, maybe in high traffic areas, you can make a fair amount of money when you look at it per hour or per person or per square foot than you can with the cleaning as well. Reselling of supplies. You know what the client's using. And a lot of clients, when you sit down initially and bid on a job, they're like, oh, we had all the supplies. Well, but I see that you have C-folds. If we put in hard roll dispensers, I can save you money. Oh, but a case of hard roll towels is 4 or 5 times the cost of C-folds. You're right, but you're going to spend more money with C-folds because nobody sits there and unfolds them all in order to use them the way that they're designed to be used.
Yeah.
So it's understanding how things are laid out, how people work, and how you can be a bigger benefit to your client.
Right.
Window cleaning.
Having all those services, it makes you a lot stickier, to your customer, and solving more of their problems makes you a better partner overall.
Yes. Or
Um,
even some things that you may not have the expertise in. I have a couple strategic alliances, like with a person that does disaster work. I
yeah,
don't hold all the licenses and the certificates and the right insurance if a sprinkler head gets knocked off, but my client knows to call me, and then I get a hold of the company that I work with to go in and take care of the water loss for them or the mold
right.
issue.
Yeah. Now I have a question. Since COVID, obviously we've seen some changes in how workspaces are utilized. We've seen occupancy and facilities go down quite a bit on a day to day. What do you think people are sort of getting wrong about cleaning programs in these hybrid environments?
What I think, my own personal feeling is that one, when we came right out of COVID, when people were that return to work memorandum came, people were hypersensitive to germs and contact and things of that nature. So there was more diligence put in it. And because we haven't had any, although COVID is still all around us, and it's just like the common, cold or the flu or whatever now, it's still there, but it's not in our faces every day like it used to. So now everybody's kind of gone back to the way it used to be. So I had clients that went from 2 days a week to 5 days a week. And now they're back down to 2 days a week because they want to save money. But if someone catches COVID, they're out for extended period of times because COVID has changed so much that it actually makes a person sicker than some of the other variants previous
Mm,
that we saw. The other thing is that a lot of people think that you have to use a lot of disinfectants in order to kill COVID, but it still comes down to you really need a clean surface. And how you clean and how you prepare that surface, whether it be a desktop, a table, a reception area, waiting room areas where there's a lot of traffic, call buttons on elevators. You still got to focus on all those high touch spaces, and you have to use microfiber. And again, in my opinion, because it cleans deeper and better because of the way that it's designed than paper towel or a
yeah,
cloth terry rag.
yeah, yeah. How can a facility manager tell, you think, whether they're getting what they pay for?
That's a fun question.
Yeah, this podcast is generally for people in the facilities space and contractors. And when I'm selling janitorial, services, I often think, what are the metrics here that we can actually show? How could we measure our success? So from a facility manager's perspective, what, should they be looking at to know if they are getting what they're paying for?
We started recently cleaning a hospital. So we weren't even in the job a week and a half when they went around with products that glow with black light and touched a lot of the surfaces, windowsills, bases of tables and chairs, desktops, edges, areas in restrooms, carpets, floors. They hit so many different services because they had been burned by so many other services in the past, and they wanted to make sure they were getting what they were paying for, exactly what you're asking. So the next day they went and, after our cleaning, and they went around and, oh, well, you missed this, you missed that, so there was things we missed. I'm not going to say that we cleaned everything 100%, but he said, oh my gosh, you hit a higher percentage than we would have expected. And most of the areas that weren't were like you didn't get a mop underneath a shelf that, 3 inches from the floor because there's still some of that material under the shelf. You didn't get the base of some of the chairs. So now we went back to the task and frequencies. Well, you did this on a Wednesday. We clean that on Mondays in the zone. Here's our maps. We clean that on Mondays. Wednesday, yeah, we didn't clean it Wednesday night, so you are going to find that on Thursday, because go back on Monday and take a look and see if we did it after Monday night service, because we're required to do that. There's another gentleman that's out there that runs a cleaning company, and he actually does the swabs, and so do we at times. And it'll let us know what's the particulate of dirty as opposed to clean, how much organic material is left on a surface. And I do know that a lot of facility management companies will also do that. They'll go through with the swab tests. And there was a lot of that during COVID that was being done. I actually remember an episode on, I think it was whatever news station it was, and they looked at public transportation during COVID, and they were testing the handrails and a lot of the trolleys and the subway systems, and finding out that they weren't being cleaned properly because, 37,000 particulates on a hand thing. It's like, wait, we're in COVID and you're not hitting those areas? So those are some of the things that people can do to ensure. A lot of customers have videos. They all have, and the facility manager for this hospital says, I spend 8 hours a day watching the videos to see what the cleaning company's doing the night before.
Really? Wow.
And the first night we showed up, we had 9 people, and he goes, the other company had 2. And I go, well, we overstaffed it because we wanted people in backup and stuff like that, but your facility is so far gone, we wanted to catch it up because it looked bad.
Yeah.
So he was able to see that we were different right from the start. And even the types of equipment that we bring in. We're bringing in commercial grade equipment.
Equipment's such a big one. Yeah.
Yeah. And the chemistry and the materials. But it's not like I'm buying a household vacuum cleaner that's got a 10-foot cord. I've got, a backpack with a 25-foot cord. I have an auto scrubber. And he says, yeah, they brought in, this little like household scrubber like my mother had for the floor in the kitchen, and tried to tell them that was an auto scrubber. And it had a cleaning circumference of about 6 inches. It's not an auto scrubber.
Yeah.
So facilities people educate them so that they know what the different pieces of equipment are. Because how many times have people say, oh, do you have one of those Zamboni things? Oh, you mean an auto scrubber?
Yeah.
Because they think we're not cutting ice, we're cleaning floors.
Oh, that's funny. I'm sure you've been in situations where customers, either they're new customers that you're doing proposals for, or current customers where they've mentioned that they need to cut budget in some way, and maybe they want to cut scope down, obviously as well. What's sort of, what do you look at in that kind of situation? What do you think these, what do you think management is overlooking in that situation?
A lot of it's usually within like any company that has janitorial firms cleaning their business. It's one of their highest costs, no lie. Because if you're there 5 days a week, you are going to be one of their highest costs. You'll be right up there with energy. The big difference is we're in a very labor-driven industry, because when you look at, for every dollar that we pay out between, the wage, the taxes, the insurance, the workers' comp, the disability, the unemployment, all those costs go into part of what we're charging a customer. And again, we're in a razor thin industry where, half a cent makes a difference sometimes in a proposal bid. So I like to sit down with my clients and say, okay, one, what's the price point you need to be near? And then what are you willing to give up to get to that price point? So if they go, well, we'd like to cut the budget by 20%. Well, you're not going to cut the budget by 20% by telling me to reduce the dusting frequency from once a week to once a month, because it's not possible. So then you have to look at the things that make a difference. Yeah. Cleaning of the restrooms, removing of the trash, the vacuuming, and you tell them what each of those things.
Go, whoa. They say, whoa, not that.
Exactly. Or they start thinking, well, holy cow, like, why are you going after those 3? And then it's explaining to them why. Well, cleaning a restroom, it is the most labor-intensive part of what we do. So if you tell me to clean your bathrooms once a week as opposed to 5 days a week, it's going to take me longer in that 1 day a week to clean them than it would if I was doing them every day, because they're going to have all that additional usage during the day, but it's the area because it's the area that has the biggest impact on the health of the building and the health on the people using them. Because the average person uses the bathroom 4 times a day during an 8-hour period of time that they work. I go, how do you know that? I said, I've been doing this over 40 years. So that's how I know it. I said, it's a number that we talked about years and years ago, and it really hasn't changed. So if you have a building with 1,000 people and you say, okay, roughly it's 50% male, female use of bathrooms. So you've got 500 people using a bathroom 4 times a day. That's 2,000 uses a day. And you want me to go to once a week restroom cleaning? Are you for real?
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
start letting them understand that. But things that can be done is maybe look at your equipment. Are you using upright vacuum cleaners? And you can move to a backpack vacuum, which is more effective, more efficient, and picks up time. So now you're cutting real labor out. Or you get the client to buy into how to reduce it, that everybody at their desk, whether it be a cubicle or a private office, take their trash to a collection center. So instead of picking up 1,000 waste baskets, I
Sure.
now have 10 pickup stations to pick up the trash and refuge to take it out of the building, as opposed to 1,000 points. So that'll help reduce real time.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're like, well, our people won't do that. Well, you're asking me to cut a budget 20% when energy costs are going up, you know, insurance is going up. It's been a hard market for insurance the last few years. Labor rates are going up. I'm in New York State, where they've been, not only we have one of the highest minimum wages in the United States, but
Yeah.
now it's also tied into what inflation is. So in essence, it's never going to go down. Every year it's going to go up. So when my costs keep going up, you can't tell me that you're going to reduce it 20% without having some negotiation back and forth. And I've worked on it with some of my consulting clients as well. How do we get 10% or 13% reduction for my client? And you
Hmm.
have to ask the hard questions, but you can't sit there and make those decisions yourself. Your
Yeah.
client has to be part of that.
Yeah. And I think, the contractor has to do a good job of explaining all the things that you just talked about and, bringing that expertise to the table so that they can make an educated decision. Yeah. You got me thinking about risk management and, you're talking about, costs and things like that. What are some examples of costly mistakes that you've seen some organizations make over the years that
No
stand
wet
out to
floor
you?
signs. No wet floor signs. And, people, well, I have a wet floor sign. But then my question back is, how many wet floor signs do you need? Because, and then I goes, okay, so here's a hallway and it's a school. How many wet floor signs do you need? Oh, well, there's an elevator, so I probably need one in front of the elevator. There's a stairwell at both ends, so I need those 2, and then one in the middle. So I need 4 or 5. Like, no, I said, every one of those penetrations, every one of those classrooms needs to have a wet floor sign in front of it. Yeah, but that's 27 rooms, plus the top of the stairs, plus in front of the elevator. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's a real
Yeah.
cost, because one slip fall runs into the tens of thousands. It might be $60,000, $100,000 in a settlement issue for a back injury or a
Yeah.
broken leg that's a compound fracture. And I've seen that happen. I've worked for companies where we were sued in the past, but we had all our ducks in a row. And it came down to that the person was violating the dress code of the company that they worked for by wearing stilettos in the middle of winter in upstate New York. You don't wear, 9-inch heels in the middle of winter on a wet surface. You just don't do that, but those are some of the things that happen, or not teaching people how to remove trash properly, lifting properly.
Hmm.
The number of back injuries, or you have these
Right.
dumpsters where the opening where the throw it is so high, and then people are filling up the bags so they're about 100 pounds. No, you got to fill the bags up less.
Yeah.
Or having people, and I've seen it happen, where they'll fill up the bags because they got to walk way out to a dumpster, and they'll throw them on their back over their shoulder like a Santa sack, so to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And any sharp object may go through and puncture and cut them in their shoulder, and then they can
Yeah.
get a staph infection or worse.
Right.
So little things like that make a big difference, or yanking the cord out of the wall and breaking off the ground plug,
Yep.
and then plugging it in, and then go to vacuum a wet carpet that's near an entrance during winter time, and again, upstate New York, and then they get an electrical shock.
Yep. Yep. These are all great tips, and I'm like, yep, seen that. Yep, encountered that. Yep, last
You
week. Yeah.
go ahead.
Um, and yeah, so when you're thinking about liability, how important is documentation and record keeping of the services that you're providing each night? Is that super important as far as your risk goes as well? I mean, everything's on camera these days, so everyone knows where everybody is. But the actual paperwork, the paper trail of it.
It's amazing the amount of paperwork that we have to maintain. And I have a former employee from years ago who had worked for me for a less than 2 month period of time, and they worked in a building that was a autism type building. So like there was rubber surfaces so that sounds would deaden, so that there wasn't a lot of that extra noise and things like that. And I had bought double insulated motors for the vacuum cleaners and stuff to keep the decibels down. And in this particular space, there was a carpet, and it took about 15 minutes a day to vacuum. They worked 5 days a week, so they were around their vacuum cleaner in the on position about an hour and 15 minutes a week. They went to another job, and that job did a pre-employment physical, and the labor department reached out to me and said that I caused their deafness.
Mm.
And they're like, so I had 3 days with the Department of Labor coming in here. We showed our training records. I had to get the purchase records of the vacuum cleaner, show them the actual vacuum cleaner itself. So I had to go out to and get it out of service and bring it in here to my office and have it turned on. And even the person says, well, that vacuum cleaner is less noisy than my own home vacuum cleaner. I said, yeah, and they used it for 15 minutes a day. So can you explain to me how this individual had, hearing loss due to what they did for me? So then we went back through and all the training, all the onboarding stuff, all the training that they had prior to coming in. And I said, oh, and by the way, we got them through this program that was taking displaced individuals. And this person had come from a war-torn part of the world where they were around mortars all the time. Do you think that had anything to do with their hearing loss?
Yeah.
So we were waived of the thing, but the amount of paperwork and going through all the HR files, all the training files, the equipment purchases, any maintenance to the equipment, they wanted to go to the building and see where this person worked. I had to get authorization to walk into this facility with somebody from the outside to do some testing and things like that. But they can get very in depth. So that type of stuff is so important.
Yeah.
In addition to, we have some software that we've developed with an AI company here in the Rochester market that helps us track things and takes pictures of things that are going on too.
Mhm.
So not only do we have client photos and video going on, but we're also doing that in our own job to make sure that things are right, showing the equipment the way that it looks before shift, after shift, so that we know that things are being put away. Yes, we're taking pictures showing that the right amount of wet floor signs are out and things like that, because if there is a slip fall, we want to make sure. If there's a frayed carpet, if there's a walk-off mat that's rolling up, we don't provide the walk-off mats, but here's a safety violation or potentially a safety violation. So we look at all of that, because most people are going to come back after the cleaning company and say, oh, well, you guys didn't put the carpet down right and it rolled up. Well, no, you had the wrong type of carpet down. It's not weighted. It doesn't have the beveled edges. It's curling over time, and that has
Yeah.
nothing to do with us.
Yeah. So you've spent many years training people and, for your own company, but I think also on the professional side as well. Tell me what kind of skills and traits that you're looking for when you're hiring a technician.
You want the joke version?
We'll take the joke first and then we'll get serious, because I'm all
A
for a
mirror.
joke.
The mirror test. You put it under the nose. If they fog it up, you put them to work. That was what we used to do years ago. No, in reality, you got to hire the smile for one.
Mm.
Somebody who is easy and approachable, because there's a book out there by Walt Disney that they put more training into their custodial staff than even all of the characters that go out and perform, because they know that that's who people are going to walk up to. They know that the family that's looking for the restroom, or how do I get over to this exhibit, they are going to ask the custodian, how do I get there? So hiring the smile, someone who's approachable, who is knowledgeable, who's trainable, is malleable. And you can tell a lot from a person just by sitting down with them, talking to them face to face over a phone. You can tell how warm that person is. If a
Mm,
person's standoffish, so that's one of the first things we look at. The other is, how does the person in an interview present themselves in their dress? Are they sloppy, wrinkled, dirty? Again, the perception is huge. If a person comes in kind of unbathed in dirty and ripped and torn clothing and things like that, the perception, if they are out cleaning, is, wow, this person can't take care of themselves. How are they going to take care of my building? And I'm not saying that somebody who maybe is homeless who comes in, you can still come in looking clean, neat, and everything else, because we have some programs with some organizations where we work with people that have had issues getting a job and might be semi-homeless and living in a shelter or something, but
mhm.
they come in and present themselves well. And that's very important, because perception is huge. And then we have the language barriers that sometimes clients get very intimidated by. So we color code everything. And then the software that we have is also a communication tool between us and our front line, as well as with our clients, so that if you speak Swahili and somebody enters something in English, you're going to see what the request is in Swahili. You're going to answer it in Swahili, and then it's going to come back to the originator in their native tongue, which was English, so that it helps bridge some of that gap of intimidation by, hey, but again, a person has to be able to talk about whatever it is that they're talking about.
Yeah, that personality is so important, 'cause it's also an indicator of work ethic, I think. And if you've hired and trained a lot of people, you start to get a second sense, I feel,
Yes.
for
Oh, you
people.
you definitely do, particularly when
Yeah.
you've been in an industry as long as I have. Usually you can tell, even, they say don't judge a book by a cover, but if you have a 15-second interaction with a person coming out of the HR office, you usually can tell. Or you can say that person's perfect for this facility, not so good for that facility.
Yeah. Yeah. When facilities are evaluating cleaning contractors, what are some of the top things they should ask about? I think about inspections being maybe one of the more important things, with training being there, maybe number two. What what items stand out to you as being highly important?
One of the big questions I'm asked all the time is, are your employees your employees? Are they 1099s, or are they W-2 employees? Because that makes a big difference in a facility's eyes. And my employees are my employees. I do have some subcontractors, like I told you earlier, but I tell the client in those cases, hey, when they're doing this, I have an outside, but they're all vetted. Also, the fact that we do background checks.
Mhm.
So it doesn't mean that people with indiscretions can't work in certain places,
Right.
but there's a lot of places, like if you're servicing financial institutions like banks, people can't even have a bankruptcy in their past. And then if you have people at a school, they can't even have parking tickets. So there's so many things that you have to look at. So having an outside third party that's looking at that, and you can say it's not just like locally, but we're doing for the city of Rochester, the state of New York, the United States, and then the globally, this is what we've checked for. That puts you in a whole different light to a client than somebody who says, well, we just have them go to their local place and get a receipt showing that they're going to get a record check for us, which is how, when I first came up through the ranks, that's how it was done.
Yeah.
And then you hoped that somebody would actually have their police report come in.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And, background checks are not cheap, especially when you're hiring a lot of people and we have turnover. So it's a big part.
As well as drug
It
testing.
drug testing. Yeah.
And then we're in
Um,
a state where marijuana is legal, so I can't test for it like I used to on the initial. But
Mm-hmm.
if somebody has done something wrong in the job, God forbid somebody runs over somebody with a car and kills them in the
Yeah.
parking lot, I can test for that under probable cause, but I can't test any other way.
Mm-hmm. Right. You have that offsite testing vendor, if
Yes,
somebody gets injured or something like that as well, potentially.
correct.
When a facility manager hands you a scope of work during an RFP process, what's one thing you often see missing from there?
Sometimes it's even what I see that's on there, spray buffing. It's like,
Uh,
when was the last time was this updated?
mhm.
So there's a lot of old terminology, things that aren't done as often because of the way finishes are made today and stuff. So it's going over and um, understanding what terms mean, because they'll say sanitize or no, disinfect when they really mean sanitize. Or I've seen the word sterilize in some RFPs for restrooms. And it's like, you understand what sterilizing is. It means that we kill 100% of the germs. Like, that's next to impossible unless I use these items,
Yeah.
and these items are very costly, and it would be costly for you. So it's making sure that you understand the terms that they have and not just looking at it real quick down. Oh yeah, it's standard boilerplate. It's not. You really have to look at it. Other things is like spot cleaning a carpet. Identify what is actually a spot. Is it the size of a dime? The size of a quarter? How many spots is it? Is it one spot, or is it like someone spilled a pot of coffee and there's now hundreds of spots? That's
Yeah.
carpet cleaning. That's not spot cleaning. So
Mhm.
really identifying and explaining to people what those definitions are. I rather have the arguments at the negotiation table than after an account is awarded and then there's a problem that comes up. And as a contractor, you want to make it right, but you also want to make sure you're not losing your shirt.
Right. We have a lot of technology come into the world, but obviously into the industry as well. What are you finding is delivering like real value today? And what's kind of smoke and mirrors at this point?
Huh. Wow. Um, I would say that we have a lot of technology in our industry. Some of it is used and some of it's been in our industry for many years, but has really started to be developed more often and more frequently. The use of auto scrubbers have been around for many, many, many years. They've gotten better, more effective, more efficient, different sizes because you could only buy larger sizes in the past. So I would say that auto scrubbers have been a huge benefit to us, because not only are they working with clean water and then vacuuming them up and leaving a cleaner surface than a mop can do, but also with some of the compact sizes, or because how often are you given a custodial closet that's really roomy? So,
Yeah.
exactly. You're laughing. They're all too small.
Well,
So
I often make the joke when I'm out in the field that like I want to corner an architect somewhere, that's designing these facilities and just ask him a lot of very serious questions about why they don't plan for cleaning and maintenance in their designs. It doesn't make sense to me, but it is frustrating.
years
And
ago,
you have and I don't want to fight with the customer about I'm trying to lobby to get space in a closet because they have things that they need to store as well.
they have
And it
things
just
they need to
creates
store,
tension. Yeah.
and they want their building clean. So it's that catch 22. They need to store things, but they also want their building clean and safe. And sometimes it's tough. And early in my career, there was a building built in downtown Rochester, 22-story building, and the original architectural drawings showed custodial closets, but when they actually built the building, they wanted more rentable space. So they eliminated all the custodial closets. So the company I worked for, we went in the first night. We're like, okay, where do we store everything? There was no custodial closets. There was no slop sinks. We were trying to fill up a 25-gallon auto scrubber with the old Bun coffee, where we were filling up the coffee pots and filling it up, and then there was no place to dump it because we couldn't even get it into the doors of the bathroom
Yeah.
with the way that the bathrooms were built.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of challenges.
I'm kind of at the point where I might pass on an opportunity if I'm in that kind of situation. It doesn't work. there's not enough space to do what you're asking us to do. Uh,
Exactly. And that's a tough conversation to have because the client thinks that, oh, what's wrong? We're a prestigious customer in our community. And yet they don't have the facilities to be able to have their building serviced the right way.
yeah. And I can't ask an employee to do an excellent job if we can't have the resources there for them to do that. It just doesn't make sense. So, you operate your own company, and I wanted to ask you a couple questions about leadership. And then we'll get into the rapid fire closing segment where I get to ask you some
No.
more fun questions,
Okay.
actually. What have you found to be the hardest part of building a business?
There's a couple of things. Finding the right employees with the right dedication and understanding and trying to train and develop people so that they can see this as a career. Even when I first came into this industry, I didn't see it as a career. And it wasn't until I was forced to start my own company did I really, in a lot of ways, see, well, you know what? There is a career path in this industry, even though I had been promoted up through one. So explaining and working with your people to understand that there is a career path and that you do have their best interest at hand. Because I have a lot of like lunch and learns where I bring in outside people that will talk about financing because a lot of entry level employees, even if they're working 2 or 3 jobs, don't always have the best use of money sometimes. It's like, can you give me a loan on my check that I'm going to get on Friday? I legally can't do that. But in addition to that, why do you need that money early? You're probably not financing your money right. So here's some people. So we have lunch and learns where they come in to help with the whole how to build credit and use it responsibly and debt. And I've had a couple of people buy houses now, a couple of people buy brand new cars as opposed to clunkers. And that gives me a lot of satisfaction that I'm able to help people live a better life.
Yeah.
And the other thing, from a business owner standpoint, I started out when I started this company, I'd been in several high level positions in several different companies, and I thought I knew a lot about cleaning. I knew a lot about cleaning. I didn't know a lot about ownership. So when I first started and hired the first employee and had to workers' comp and all the disability insurance, everything else that went with it, it's like, whoa, wait a minute. And making sure that you budget for that and having different buckets of money, including savings to start, put $100 every week into a savings account that's interest bearing so that when you do land a big account, you have all the money to buy all the equipment you need. And, how to get a line of credit and how to build towards being able to get a line of credit and how to use that line of credit responsibly. Those were never anything that anybody taught me. And I've had to learn hard on my own.
These are all hurdles that they trip everybody up. And it's such a big deal to have these things dialed in. Otherwise, it'll put you out of business
Very
quickly.
easily.
And if, a lot of us, especially, you more than me have been in this a long time. I'm sure you've seen it. It doesn't matter. There's always going to be a thing that you have to learn and to fix. So that's good
Even
insight.
even locally, seeing companies that started about my same time, and they may not even be cleaning businesses. I'm talking even other businesses that I saw as pillars of the community that have gone out of business because of the poor planning on the backside with the financing. Very successful businesses that have gone under, and not because of COVID, just because of not managing the money properly. And that's probably one of the toughest things to learn as a business owner. That and how to collect the money that you're owed.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we'll move into the final segment here, the rapid fire segment. I want to
Look at
ask you
the
a couple.
smirk you're getting.
Well, this is the fun part. I want to ask you what your favorite brand of tool is
At my house or here?
in general. I mean,
I
so
mean, for
that's it.
home repairs is DeWalt. I
Okay.
love DeWalt products.
Yeah.
When it comes to my business, I would have to say Protein.
Okay.
I've
I was
tried
just
other
going to ask you
backpack
the
lines.
next question is favorite piece of equipment is the
I
next
love
question.
backpacks. Oh my
Yeah.
God. When I worked for this other company, backpacks were just coming out and Pro Team had just come out with them and they anybody who is not like my age, who never worked with one of the early backpacks, would not understand how uncomfortable they were or how hot they were and how far the design has come over the years. But even when they first came out, I saw the true benefit because I worked for a company that we went from 26 upright vacuum cleaners down to 4 backpacks. So just the savings in time, the number of people, the amount of equipment, and all the time we were having to pay with the uprights because they would go under the desks. And of course, back then we had phones on our desks. So either the phone lines, or the computer lines would get all up in the beater bar and cut them all off. So the amount of money that the company I worked for was paying out, not just for my own building, but all the buildings that they had. And with the backpacks, you could vacuum up over that and get the staples and the paper clips and the dust bunnies and not disrupt anything was amazing to me. And they're multi-use. You can use them for so many things.
Right. What is your favorite part of the building to clean?
I love doing the floor work. So if it's the front lobby, because that's a first impression area. And if that's done right, that's a great impression for people. And I had this comment because we do a lot of flip turns for like senior living facilities and things like that, and a lot of college dorms. And in the summertime, I actually like cleaning the kitchen.
Yeah.
And getting the stove and the refrigerator and pulling it out and tearing it apart and cleaning it and putting it back. Because I was on the phone with my former boss because we refer work back and forth. And the company she works for, where I used to work years ago, hers is bathrooms.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, boy, we'd be the perfect team in flips because I like the kitchens, you like the bathrooms.
Yeah. Yeah. All the cabinetry in kitchens is not my favorite. Which is maybe why we don't do any residential in my company. But yeah, it's a good answer. So what keeps you going? Coffee, tea, energy drinks? What's your vice?
Coffee. Black coffee.
Nice.
And over the years, I have gone from pots of coffee, literally pots of coffee, down to less than a pot of coffee a day now because I was way overdoing the caffeine. That and the other part is I love to work. And my girlfriend tells me, she's like, you're never going to retire. And she's retired already. And she says, you are never going to retire. She says, it is not in your genetic makeup. And she says, that's okay with me. It'll just be different. You won't be doing like what you do today.
Right. So what is your favorite part of doing a walkthrough with a new customer? Or if I could rephrase, I could say like when you walk into a building for the first time, what stands out to you?
Those are, in my mind, two different questions. So the best part of dealing with the person.
Yeah.
Well, even the first one I think is important is that a lot of the people we walk through with don't have a lot of answers because they sometimes are not always as educated as somebody who's in this industry every single day. So when they have a real problem and you have a real solution of how to solve that, and you can see that light go off for them, that moment is huge. And then the walkthrough itself is being able to walk through, listen to them, and ask them the question about, what are their challenges? What don't they like about the other company that they've been, why are they bidding it out? And what do they do like? And then when you see the things that they do like and you're on the walkthrough and you're like, well, I know I can do that better, or wow, I really got to step up my game if I'm going to get up to there. So it could go either way, but seeing the janitorial and the custodial closet and what types of equipment, and know that I've got better equipment, better materials, better supplies, and that it's going to be neater than what I usually see it. Because if a person can't take care of their closet, they're probably not taking care of the building. And that goes back to that perception of the interview.
Yeah. Well, Doc, thanks for joining the show and sharing all your knowledge and experience with the podcast. I've really enjoyed listening to your perspectives and everything, and I wish you the best, and I hope to see more of you online, and hopefully we can keep this conversation going.
I would love to. Thank you for the opportunity, Matt. Thank you for reaching out and asking me in the phone call that we had to set this up. I mean, I wish you the best of luck. I'm looking at you and seeing how much younger you are than I am, and I'm saying, hopefully this is going to be you in 20, 30 years when you're my age. And that you have just as much knowledge to help other companies with, because I know that's in your genetic makeup from the first phone call we had. So thank you for being you.
Well, thanks, Zach. I appreciate that. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like, subscribe, and share the Facility Focus podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Matt.